I'm discussing about research design. Research design refers to the overall study utilized to answer the research question. Research design typically outlines the theories and models underlying a project, the research questions of the project, and strategy of gathering data and information, and strategy for producing answers from the data. A clear statement of the research problem, methods of techniques to be utilized for gathering information from the population to be researched, approach to be utilized in processing and analyzing data. So design qualitative, quantitative and mixed methods, survey, descriptive, experimental, quasi, experimental, casual, comparative, correlation, explanatory, and explanatory. Uh, Survey, qualitative, ethnography, phenomenological, grounded theory, narrative research, case study, mixed data, the convergent parallel design, the explanatory sequence design, exploratory sequence design. Survey research, the survey research is the process of collecting data from predefined groups, for example, customs or potential customs, with the ultimate goal of the converging insight about your products and service brand overall. Survey research design is the very most important. Okay. Survey research is the most elementary tool for all the sorts of the qualitative and research techniques. The very most important purpose of the research is to widely explain the characteristics of particular group of bonds of population. Survey design involves the planning of the whole survey project and outline the steps to take when conducting the survey. These steps start from the population of the survey purpose and end of the interpretation of the survey results. Why survey design? To describe the situation, to explain the situation, to identify and solve the problem, to measure the change, to study attitude, behavior, and habits. The survey design specifically involves creating, brainstorming, and verifying the survey purpose, research questions, identifying the samples from the target population, choosing a survey method, creating a questionnaire or survey tools. Conducting a pilot survey, revising the questionnaires, executing the full survey, analyzing and interpreting the data gathered, and communicating the results. Cross-sectional survey, the cross-sectional studies are observational studies that analyze data from the population at a single point in time. They are often used measure and prevalence of the health outcomes, understand determinants or else and describe the features of the population. Cross-section survey involves the collection of the data in a single point of the time from sample down from the specified population. For example, cross-sectional survey are the routinely conducted to assess the frequency with which people perform certain behaviors of the numbers of people and whole particular studies, beliefs. Experimental survey research design. The experimental research design definition is the research method used to investigate the interaction between the independent and dependent variables, which can be used to determine the cause and effect of relationship. Experimental research is commonly used within the framework of scientific method. Experimental survey research design includes the survey that can be taken before, during, and after a program event or intervention, compares results between the control and experimental groups. Descriptive survey research design. The descriptive survey research design uses both qualitative and quantitative research methods. It is used primarily to conduct qualitative research and gather data that is statistically easy to analyze. However, it can also provide qualitative data that helps to describe and understand the research subject. Descriptive research survey research design looks into the status of a given situation using a survey examine association of variables rather than usual relationship. Descriptive research design aims to systematically obtain the information to describe phenomenon, situation, or population. More specifically, it helps to answer that what, where, and how questions regarding the resource problems rather than the why. Descriptive research is seeks to explain the current status of the identified barriers. The aims of descriptive research is to explain and interpret the current status of the people setting the condition or events. Experimental research, it is all called true experimentation, uses that scientific method to establish the cause-effect relationship among the group and variables that makes up study. Key characteristics of this experiment: random assignment, control over extraneous variables, manipulation of the treatment conditions, outcome measures, group comparison. The steps in conducting the experimental design: the decide of the experimental address your research problem, form the hypothesis to test the cause and effect of relationship, select an experimental unit and identify study participants, select an experimental treatment and introduce it, choose a type of experimental design, conduct the experiment, organize and analyze the data, develop an experimental research report. Quasi-experimental design is are often referred to as the natural experimental because that researchers do not have true control over the independent variables. Treatment labels cannot be randomly assigned because the participants naturally fall into pre-existing groups based on their birth order in the families. Casual comparative design is the resource design that seeks to find relationship between the independent and dependent variables after an action, an event has already occurred. The researcher goals is to determine whether the independent variables affect the outcomes or dependent variables by comparing two or more groups individuals. Also known as the ex post facto research, Latin both the effect and least as already occurred in most we already retrospect. Correlational research design or correlation research design is a relationship between the two variables within the research controlling either then aims to find whether that is the positive correlation, negative correlation, zero correlation. Positive correlation, negative, and zero correlation. Uh, Correlation coefficient, the most widely used practice for the calculating the correlation coefficient between the two variables, Caulfield correlation coefficient and correlation coefficient between two variables x and y, a denoted by and r, the variable between the +1 and -1. Steps of correlation research to identify the problems for the study, identify the individuals of the study, identify two or more measures for each of individual in the study, collect data and monitor potential threats, analyze the data and represent the results, interpret the results. Exploratory and explanatory design, it is the what you do to get familiar with the data. You may start out of the hypothesis or questions, or you may just really to develop into the data, determine what might be interesting about it. And exploratory analysis, the process of plotting over 100 rocks to find overlaps one or two precious gemstone. Explanatory, it is the what happens when you have something specific you want to show and audience probably about those one or two precious gemstones. Thanks for watching. Thank you for the question. That's now. Bye bye. See you again.